Welcome back to our World War I series. In the last episode, we saw how Europe plunged into war following the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and the ensuing chain reaction of events. Now, we're moving to the heart of the conflict, the Western Front, where some of the most brutal and iconic battles of World War I took place. This chapter delves into the brutal reality of life on the Western Front, exploring the strategies, battles, and human experiences that defined this harrowing period in history. Let's dive in. After the initial German advance through Belgium and into France, both sides quickly realized that this war wasn't going to be the quick and decisive conflict they had expected. Instead, the Germans and the Allies, mainly French and British forces, began a series of maneuvers to outflank each other, leading to what's known as the race to the sea. As both sides tried to gain an advantage, they eventually dug in, creating a line of trenches stretching from the North Sea all the way to the Swiss border. This line, known as the Western Front, would hardly move for the next 4 years, becoming the site of some of the most grueling and deadly battles in history. Trench warfare wasn't just a new way of fighting. It was a harsh and unforgiving reality for the millions of soldiers on the front lines. The trenches were cold, muddy, and filled with rats and disease. Soldiers spent days, weeks, and sometimes even months in these conditions, facing constant danger from enemy fire, artillery shells, and poison gas. Life in the trenches was a mix of boredom, fear, and exhaustion. When not fighting, soldiers tried to pass the time by writing letters, playing cards, or simply trying to stay warm and dry. But at any moment, they could be ordered over the top, to climb out of the trenches and charge across no man's land, where death was almost certain. No man's land was the deadly stretch of ground between opposing trenches. It was a barren wasteland of mud, barbed wire, and shell craters, where the bodies of fallen soldiers often lay unburied for days or even weeks. Charging across no man's land was one of the most terrifying experiences of the war. Soldiers would face a hail of machine gun fire, artillery bombardments, and sometimes poison gas, all while trying to reach the enemy's trenches. Few made it across alive. These attacks, known as over-the-top assaults, resulted in massive casualties for very little gain. Some of the war's most infamous battles took place on the Western Front. The Battle of the Marne in 1914 stopped the German advance and saved Paris, but it also set the stage for trench warfare. The Battle of Verdun in 1916 became a symbol of French determination, with both sides suffering horrendous losses in what became the longest battle of the war. Then there was the Battle of the Somme, where the British launched a massive offensive in July 1916. On the first day alone, the British suffered nearly 60,000 casualties, making it one of the bloodiest days in military history. The battle dragged on for months, with little territorial gain, but with a staggering human cost. To try and break the stalemate, both sides turned to new technologies and tactics. Tanks made their debut on the Western Front, rolling over trenches and barbed wire. The skies above became a new battlefield with aerial dogfights between fighter planes. And then there was the use of poison gas, which caused horrific injuries and deaths, adding a new layer of fear to an already terrifying war. Despite these innovations, neither side could gain a decisive advantage. The Western Front remained a brutal stalemate where millions of lives were lost for just a few miles of land. The war seemed to have no end in sight. The Western Front and the trench warfare that defined it turned World War I into a war of attrition, where victory was measured in inches rather than miles. The brutal conditions, horrific battles, and staggering loss of life made it clear that this war was unlike anything the world had seen before. In our next video, we'll shift our focus to the Eastern Front and other theaters of the war, where different strategies and challenges played out. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.